The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were when I used to meet my daughter for lunch, back when she still answered my calls. The mailman handed it to me with an apologetic smile, the kind that says he knows it's bad news but can't do anything about it. The paper was expensive, cream-colored, heavy. The law firm's name embossed across the top in gold letters that caught the afternoon light. Richardson, Walsh & Associates. I didn't need to open it to know what it said. I'd been expecting it for weeks, ever since my son-in-law Marcus started asking questions about my house. Casual questions at first. Mom, have you thought about downsizing? This place is getting too big for you, don't you think? We could help you find somewhere more manageable. More manageable meant smaller. Smaller meant cheaper. Cheaper meant they could pocket the difference when they sold. The bedroom colonial I'd lived in for 37 years. The house where I'd raised 2 children. Where my husband had died in the upstairs bedroom. Holding my hand telling me he loved me one last time. Where every creaking floorboard and stained ceiling tile held a memory I wasn't ready to erase. I opened the envelope standing right there in the driveway. My hands didn't shake, that surprised me. Inside was a petition for guardianship. Legal conservatorship they called it. A doctor's note was attached. Stamped and signed by someone I'd never met. Dr. Helena Brooks. The diagnosis read early-stage dementia with increasing inability to manage personal affairs. I read it 3 times, each word sinking deeper, colder, sharper. I had never seen Dr. Brooks in my life. I'd never been diagnosed with anything except high blood pressure and stubborn pride, according to my real doctor, the one I'd been seeing for 20 years. But there it was. Official. Typed. Signed. A lie wrapped in medical terminology, designed to make me look incompetent. Designed to hand my life over to my daughter and the man she married. A man who smiled too much and never met your eyes when he spoke. I folded the papers carefully, slid them back into the envelope, and walked inside. The house was quiet. It always was now. The kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful but had started to feel like waiting. I set the envelope on the kitchen table, and stared at it for a long time. The afternoon light slanted through the window, catching dust motes in the air. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. The distant bark of a dog 2 houses down. The soft tick of the clock my mother had given me when I got married. Everything in this house was mine. Every piece of furniture, every photograph, every chip in the paint. I had earned it. My husband and I had scraped together the down payment by working double shifts, him at the factory, me at the hospital. We'd painted the nursery ourselves. Barely knowing what we were doing. Laughing when we got more paint on each other than the walls. We'd weathered layoffs and medical bills and the 1,000 small disasters that come with building a life. And now my daughter, the same little girl who used to beg me to read her one more story before bed, wanted to take it all away. Not wanted, was trying. Legally, methodically. With paperwork and doctors and lawyers. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter, something that felt like clarity. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one. But I wouldn't fight the way they expected. I wouldn't yell or plead or beg them to see reason. I'd learned a long time ago that begging only works on people who have a conscience. Instead, I'd do what I'd always done. I'd work. I'd plan, I'd wait. And when the moment came, I'd make sure they understood exactly who they were dealing with. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad and a pen, writing down everything I knew. The timeline, the phone calls, the visits that had grown shorter and colder over the past year, Marcus's questions about my finances, Sarah's sudden interest in my medical appointments. The way they'd started talking about me like I wasn't in the room, using phrases like, at her age and, for her own good. I wrote it all down, and with each line, the picture became clearer. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't concern. This was a plan. And it had been in motion for months, maybe longer. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I called my real doctor first, Dr. Raymond Chen. The man who'd treated me since my husband's diagnosis. He answered on the second ring, his voice warm and familiar. Mrs. Patterson. How are you feeling? I told him about the letter. About Dr. Brooks. About the diagnosis I'd never received. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice had hardened. That's medical fraud. I'll write a statement immediately. You're as sharp as anyone I know, Ellen. Sharper than most. Next, I called a lawyer. Not one of the big firms with gold embossed names. I called Janet Rodriguez, a woman I'd met at church, who ran a small practice out of a converted house on Elm Street. She'd helped my neighbor fight a predatory reverse mortgage last year. When I told her what was happening, she didn't waste time with sympathy. "Come in today," she said. "Bring everything. We're going to bury them in paperwork." I spent the rest of the morning gathering documents. Bank statements, property deeds, tax returns, medical records from Dr. Chen, females, text messages. I printed everything, organized it into folders, labeled each one with the meticulous care I'd once used to organize my nursing station. By the time I walked into Janet's office, I had a stack of evidence 6 inches thick. She looked at me and smiled. Not a polite smile, a knowing one. "They picked the wrong woman to mess with," she said. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Sarah called me twice in that time, her voice tight and nervous, asking if I'd received the papers. I told her I had. She asked if I understood what they meant. I said I did. She paused and I could hear Marcus in the background, whispering something I couldn't make out. Then she said, "We're doing this because we love you, Mom. You have to understand that." I didn't argue. I just said, "I'll see you in court, sweetheart," and hung up. The silence that followed felt like a door closing. Final, clean, necessary. The day of the hearing arrived cold and gray. The kind of November morning that makes everything look brittle. I wore my best navy dress, the one I used to wear to hospital board meetings. I did my hair. I put on lipstick. I wanted them to see me, really see me, not the confused old woman they tried to create on paper. Janet met me outside the courthouse, her briefcase in one hand, a coffee in the other. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded. I'd been ready for weeks. Inside, the courtroom smelled like old wood and stale air. Sarah and Marcus were already seated at the plaintiff's table, whispering to their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit, who looked like he billed by the minute. Sarah glanced over at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt maybe, or fear. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a tight, determined expression. Marcus didn't look at me at all. That told me everything I needed to know. He was the architect of this. Sarah was just the signature. The judge was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She called the room to order, and the proceedings began. Sarah's lawyer went first, laying out their case with the smooth efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times before. He painted a picture of a woman in decline, forgetful, confused, unable to manage her own affairs. He referenced Dr. Brooks's report, citing specific examples of cognitive decline. Missed appointments, unpaid bills, confusion about dates and names. None of it was true, but he said it with such confidence that I could see the judge's expression shift, just slightly, toward concern. Then Janet stood up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to place Dr. Chen's statement on the judge's bench along with my complete medical records, bank statements showing every bill paid on time, and a calendar documenting every appointment I'd attended for the past 2 years. Then she called Dr. Chen to the stand. He appeared via video link, his face filling the screen mounted on the courtroom wall. He was calm, measured, unshakable. He testified that I'd been his patient for 20 years. That I'd never shown any signs of dementia. That I'd recently passed a cognitive assessment with flying colors. That Dr. Brooks had never contacted him, despite being listed as my primary physician in the guardianship petition. Janet let that last point hang in the air. Then she asked the question everyone was thinking. "Dr. Chen, is it possible that Mrs. Patterson was examined by Dr. Brooks without your knowledge?" He shook his head. "Not only is it unlikely, it would be highly unethical. Patterson has been under my care continuously. Any specialist would have contacted me first." The judge's eyes narrowed. She looked down at the petition, then over at Sarah's lawyer. "Counsel, can you produce Dr. Brooks for questioning?" The lawyer shifted in his seat. "Your Honor, Dr. Brooks is currently out of the country, but we can provide." "I don't want explanations." The judge interrupted. "I want Dr. Brooks in this courtroom or on a video call within 48 hours. Until then, this hearing is in recess." She banged her gavel once, sharp and final, and stood up. The room fell silent. Sarah's face had gone pale. Marcus stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. Their lawyer gathered his papers quickly, avoiding eye contact with everyone. As I stood to leave, Sarah approached me. Her eyes were red, Whether from tears or anger, I couldn't tell. "Mom, please," she said, her voice low and urgent. "This isn't what it looks like." I looked at her for a long moment. At the daughter I'd raised, the girl I'd rocked to sleep. The woman who was trying to take my home. "Yes, it is," I said quietly. "And now everyone knows it." I walked past her. My head high, my steps steady. Janet was waiting by the door, a slight smile on her face. "They won't find Dr. Brooks," she said. "She doesn't exist, the signature was forged." 2 days later the charges were dropped, not quietly, not discreetly. The judge issued a written ruling that included phrases like fraudulent documentation and abuse of legal process. She referred the matter to the State Medical Board and the Bar Association. Sarah and Marcus's lawyer was facing an ethics investigation. Dr. Brooks, if she ever existed, had Vani was free, completely legally, undeniably free. Sarah tried to call me that night. Then the next day. Then the day after that, I didn't answer. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger would have meant I still cared what she thought. What I felt instead was something colder and clearer. Disappointment. The kind that doesn't heal 'cause it's rooted in truth. She'd shown me who she was. And I'd finally believed her. A week later, I was in the garden, pulling up the last of the summer plants, preparing the beds for winter. The air was crisp, the sky a hard, bright blue. I heard a car door slam and looked up. Sarah was walking up the driveway alone, no Marcus. No Laura, just my daughter, looking smaller than I remembered. Her shoulders hunched against the cold. I stood up slowly, brushing dirt from my gloves. She stopped a few feet away, her hands shoved deep in her coat pockets. "Mom, She stopped, swallowed, tried again. "I'm sorry. I didn't know Marcus had forged the documents. I thought it was real. I thought you were sick." I studied her face. She looked tired. Scared, maybe even honest. But I'd learned a long time ago that people will believe what's convenient for them. "You thought I was sick," I said slowly. "And your first instinct was to take my house." She flinched. "We were trying to help." "No," I said, my voice steady. "You were trying to help yourselves. There's a difference." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Please, Mom, I know I messed up. But you're still my mother. I still love you." I wanted to believe her. Part of me, the part that remembered holding her as a baby, desperately wanted to believe her. But love isn't just a word. It's a choice. It's action. And her actions had spoken louder than anything she could say now. "I'm sure you do," I said quietly. "But love without respect is just noise, Sarah. And I'm done listening." I turned back to the garden, kneeling down, pressing my hands into the cool earth. Behind me, I heard her breath hitch, heard her footsteps retreat, heard the car door slam and the engine start. I didn't look up, I kept working, pulling weeds, turning soil, preparing for spring. The truth is, I didn't win because I was smarter or luckier or more prepared. I won because I knew something they'd forgotten. You can't steal a life from someone who's already lived it. You can take their house, their money, their comfort. But you can't take their dignity. You can't take their memory. You can't take the years of work and love and sacrifice that built everything they have. Those things aren't in the deed or the bank account. They're in the person. And I was still standing. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the lights come on across the neighborhood. One by one, families settling in for the evening. Lives continuing ordinary and precious. My house was quiet, but it wasn't lonely, it was mine. Every corner, every shadow, every creak in the floorboards. I'd fought for it. I'd kept it. And I'd done it without lowering myself to their level, without becoming bitter or cruel. I'd simply refused to disappear. People think revenge is about making someone suffer. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, isn't about punishment. It's about refusing to be a victim. It's about standing your ground when everyone expects you to fold. It's about looking people who betrayed you in the eye and letting them see that they didn't break you. That's what they can't forgive. Not your anger. Your strength. Months passed, winter came and went. Spring arrived with all its messy, hopeful beauty. I planted flowers in the front yard, bright red geraniums that my husband used to love. I repainted the shutters. I fixed the loose step on the front porch. I made the house mine again, not just legally but emotionally. I reclaimed every inch of it, and in doing so, I reclaimed myself. Sarah sent a letter in March. I didn't open it. I put it in a drawer with all the others, unread. Maybe someday I'd be ready. Maybe not. It didn't matter. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, not even your children. It's something you give when you're ready, if you're ever ready. And I wasn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'd made my peace with that. One afternoon in late April, I was sitting on the porch with a book when a young couple walked by with a stroller. They smiled and waved, and I waved back. The woman called out, "Your garden looks beautiful." I thanked her, and they continued on their way, the baby gurgling happily, the sun warm on all our faces. It was such a small, ordinary moment, but it filled me with a quiet joy I hadn't felt in years. This was my life. Not the one Sarah and Marcus had tried to take. Not the one the courts had to defend. Just my life. Simple and mine and enough. That evening, I called Dr. Chen to thank him. He brushed it off, saying he'd only told the truth. But I knew better. He'd stood up for me when my own daughter wouldn't. He'd put his reputation on the line because it was the right thing to do. That kind of integrity is rare. I told him as much. And he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Ellen, you taught me something during all this. You taught me that dignity isn't about what people give you. It's about what you refuse to give up." I smiled, even though, that the hard way. I said, "Well." He replied, "Some lessons are worth the cost." After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, thinking about costs and lessons and the strange, painful ways we grow. I thought about my husband. About how he used to say that the hardest battles are the ones you fight alone. He was right, but he was also wrong. Because I hadn't been completely alone. I'd had Dr. Chen. I'd had Janet. I'd had my own stubborn refusal to quit. And in the end, that had been enough. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if Sarah and I will ever speak again. I don't know if she'll realize what she lost, or if she'll blame me forever. I don't know if Marcus will face any real consequences, or if he'll just move on to the next target. But I do know this: I'm still here. In my house, in my life. They tried to erase me, and they failed. That's not revenge, that's victory. So let me say this to anyone who's ever been underestimated, dismissed, or discarded by the people who were supposed to love them. Don't let them write your ending. Don't let them decide your worth. Don't let them take what you built just because they think you're too tired, or too old, or too broken to fight back. You're not. You're stronger than they know. Stronger than you know. And when you stand your ground, when you refuse to be moved, you teach them the most important lesson they'll ever learn. You teach them that you were never theirs to control. You were always your own, and you always will be. That's the truth they can't forgive. That's the power they can't take, and that's how you win. Not by destroying them, but by refusing to be destroyed. Now and always, remember that.